from Marjorie Cohn at Truth Out. The Biden administration recently expressed outrage that Russia arrested journalist Evan Gershkovich of the Wall Street Journal, a United States citizen based in Moscow, for practicing journalism. Gershkovich is now incarcerated in Russia, facing espionage charges that could garner him 20 years in prison. His appeal to lift his pretrial detention was just denied, and he was refused a consular visit. Meanwhile, however, the Biden administration continues to demand the extradition of Australian national Assange for obtaining and publishing evidence of U.S. war crimes. Norman, will the fight against Assange ever end, or is the U.S. just absolutely, you think that we're just dead set? We're never going to give up this fight against him?
Well, the U.S. government has always been hostile to WikiLeaks as an organization and what it's doing, and Julian Assange as the editor and publisher. When the U.S. government, as it should, demands the release of a journalist in Russia, saying quite accurately that someone should not be punished for, quote, practicing journalism, that also should apply equally to Julian Assange, the editor and publisher of WikiLeaks. The real analogy, the best one, I think, between, say, Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers and Julian Assange and the material that has been released over the years by WikiLeaks, the best analogy is really that in this case, WikiLeaks is like the New York Times, and Chelsea Manning was like Daniel Ellsberg. They were the sources. They were the people who courageously provided information that the public should have to the public via a media outlet. And one of the really pernicious things about the US government stance toward Julian Assange is that it rewrites history, scrambles the deck, and distorts the reality that, like many other media outlets, although not as frequently as WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks has released information that the US government didn't want the public to see or read or know about, or in the case of the notorious collateral murder video, to see. These were, according to the US government, crimes. They were making journalism a crime because in those cases, the US government didn't want the journalism to be practiced because they didn't like people being informed. I think it was Orwell who said that if journalism means anything, if it's going to be meaningful, it's going to share information that some people really don't want to see shared. And so ultimately, Julian Assange, as a journalist, is being persecuted while the US government proclaims that it is a protector and supporter of journalism.
Right, and I think we all know that's definitely not the case. From that to Nord Stream to whatever, the United States and the United States media apparatus isn't all that interested in digging into things that could hurt their access to the White House, for instance. However, one ally, Brazilian President Lula da Silva, calls for freedom for Julian Assange. He said, "The press, which defends freedom of the press, does nothing to free this citizen." I think that's absolutely right. Just a reminder that you can go on progressivehub.net, and on actions like these, we have Tell President Biden, stop punishing whistleblowers. You can write to the White House now and let him know how you feel. Obviously, it's ridiculous that we're trying to punish somebody for telling the truth. And that goes from Daniel Ellsberg, who faced 100 years in prison, to Jeffrey Sterling, who served 2.5 years, to Julian Assange, which who knows how long he would be. I mean, he's already been removed from society for how long has it been now? Has it been a decade? Or
I want to say 6 or 7 years if you include his forced exile in the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
I would most certainly include that, because if he walked out, he would have been arrested.
Sure, and that might have been well more than 7. It's a very, very long time that he's been essentially de facto house arrest, and now not only imprisoned in Great Britain, but under brutal, torturous conditions, including solitary confinement, not being allowed to get adequate medical care with severe health problems.